Welcome to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast, where Tim Keefe and Andreas Wieman cut through the hype to deliver straight talk on technology, people, and what actually works. In today's episode, Stop Doing Stupid Stuff with AI Adoption, a burnout wake-up call, the hosts tackle a critical question. Is AI helping fight workplace burnout, or is it making things worse? Drawing from a compelling CNBC article by social media producer Aisha Duda, Tim and Andreas explore why the answer is both, and it all depends on how you're implementing it. You'll discover why AI should augment humans, not replace them, the real costs of rushed AI deployment, and practical examples of eliminating administrative burden while preserving the human element. The hosts challenge the tech industry's replacement narrative and share real-world solutions for bridging the AI adoption gap. Tim and Andreas bring their combined expertise in technology adoption and employee experience to deliver insights that will change how business leaders, employees, and anyone curious about the future of work think about AI's role in organizations. So settle in and let's stop doing stupid stuff with AI adoption.
Hi, everybody. This is Tim Keefe back with another SDSS, Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast with my co-conspirator, good friend, and sometimes cellmate, Andreas Wieman. Well, Andreas, what are we up for today?
Well, we're almost up for a surprise because you almost said stop doing stupid something else.
I almost did.
I was on mute, and it was like, hey, if you're trying to talk, you have to come off of mute because I was laughing. Anywho, great way to start the podcast off, everybody. We have a great article today by Aisha Duda on working smarter, not harder. AI could help fight burnout, but is it? And so if you've listened to, I don't know, the countless number of podcasts prior to this one from Tim and I and our guests, we're all about how can we help with the adoption of any technology or process or whatever new variable is being introduced. AI is just another piece of a tech stack, is the way that we see it. So why is there an AI tech adoption gap that's going on right now? And I think there's a different answer depending on who you ask. But I think Aisha here gets to some pretty good door opener problems to saying, hey, have you thought about trying it this way? And guess what? It's not like every other example I think we've seen in social media or elsewhere is, oh, AI is going to do everything. It's going to solve all of these problems. Aisha comes in with a very pragmatic type of view and saying, well, maybe if you just look at it, have AI look at this and help the humans do this, which actually aligns very well with, Tim and I's hypothesis on introducing softly but augmenting the human capability, the human persona, human mind, and catching on that resilience with being a human and pairing it with AI effectively. So anyways, that was the longest intro ever. My bad there. My fault, Tim.
No, it's all right, because now I know how you feel. I just took a nap while you were doing that. No, I mean, I love this article because it gets to this whole thing of, AI as a tool. Not AI is going to take over the world and replace all of our jobs, and we'll be reduced to shoveling coal into the massive power plants that'll exist just to power the mega data centers that are being built. I know this sounds very dystopian, but feels that way at times, right? When you have people out there saying, oh, in the next 10 years, X percentage of all jobs will be gone. And of course, that leaves the question, of course, if nobody has a job, who's going to buy the products and services that are going to be sold? But that's a different type of problem. Anyway, for this, I think it gets to something that we are a little bit passionate about. In fact, we're trying to do some stuff in after-school programs here in San Francisco around this whole concept of not how do I become an AI engineer, which is a great path, right? I'm not saying that doesn't need to happen. But more importantly, how does the layperson use artificial intelligence tools in their own job, whatever that job may be, whether they're an artist, a musician, a writer, they're a researcher for an organization, a project manager, whatever it might be. And there are definitely jobs that are going to be impacted by this, and there's expectations. I mean, one of the things that there was a great article about McKinsey a couple of weeks ago, right? And how McKinsey's consultants are now under a lot of pressure to do things differently, because what were they really good at? Oh, creating PowerPoint presentations based on analysis of data to create recommendations and strategies for clients. And there were lots of billable hours in doing that. Well, I don't know. If I was a client, my expectations on the amount of time people are doing research and analytics against data sets would be dramatically less than they were, just for one. So you think about that, right? Like that's an area of if somebody's going to be a consultant, if somebody's going to come in and say, I'm going to look at your data and identify those patterns and come up with areas where that can be different, I'm expecting that you're using good tools to do that. No differently than I would expect a contractor to use good tools to make a repair to my house. Anyway, again, I think about this as, is this a tool that is helping or hurting the individual worker? And the article kind of goes both ways, I think. And I think it makes sense to think about it that way. I think when people use it in an intelligent way, aligned with their own personal goals, it is a good tool, right? Like
So
every tool.
personalizing. So using AI personalized to the person that's using the AI, like user personal
Yeah.
personalization is what I'm trying to spit out here.
Well, for example, one of the things that Aisha calls out, and I've used it this way, is like as a writing aid, right? Like an editor. I can write some content and literally create the right context and use any number of AI tools, Gemini, ChatGPT, that would then provide me some feedback on the writing I've done. Um, and that can be very helpful, I think, anyway, because it can prompt me to maybe redirect the way I'm structuring my thoughts and the story I'm trying to tell, because that's what my ultimate goal is not to be, the grammar police. I've got tools that can do that, right? Just like I have tools that can correct spelling errors for me. So why focus on that when I can, or even, now really date myself in the days when we had to do all this stuff where you're worried about margin sizes and leaving, space for footnotes. Well, I don't have to do any of that anymore because the tools do it for me. Well, I see AI tools in this space as the same type of thing. Allows me to think about the key elements of the concept I'm trying to get across. And I'm using a writing example, but that could be music. It could be an artist who's trying to create a graphic image that's to do what? Either to tell a story, to create an emotion. And these are the things that, I think it's a powerful tool and can help us think differently or think more broadly and maybe faster. But I also, the other side of the article, and I think it's really interesting, is it's the burnout risk, right? The
Right.
pressure that comes on that I've got to do more and I've got to use this tool that maybe I'm not comfortable with. And by the way, there's a lot of risk when you don't, oh my God, what if I create a hallucination? What if I'm a paralegal and I'm trying to write a response to litigation and I get it wrong? And nobody else catches it. And the result is the sanctions or even a dismissal of a case because we submitted a case filing or a brief that had an hallucination in it. And we've seen this, right? This is, in fact, it's happened a lot, not just once, but many, many times. And that could happen in anywhere. It could be, and then with stuff that I really worry about are places like, construction and engineering and some of these other places where a mistake could be catastrophic to a product. So I think there's that also, which is the risk of overdoing it. Oh, and you tie that together with this, and I hate this narrative. I think it's something that the AI firms really need to start to think about and try and twist it or alter it. But we got to stop talking about AI replacing people.
Taking over. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, there are jobs and jobs are always evolving. There's no question about it, right? But the challenge is if that's the drumbeat that you're out there banging, is that yes, Mr. Customer, you can buy this tool and eliminate 50% of your workforce. Well,
Well, let, let's let's dispel this right now because you and I actually were in a call in a meeting last week where we kind of got into this a little bit. And like, admittedly, I'm not going to share more than that, but admittedly, I get a little heated on this. But any firm that's telling, and like, look, I'm willing to publicly debate this by any AI executive, by the way, any AI firm that you want to have a public debate on so we can educate the listeners and the marketplace, I'm totally down for it. Anybody that's trying to sell you AI right now that says, yeah, we can replace your workforce, think about how that actually logically works. If they're selling you AI, and if you have just a, what's the easy way to say this, like a cursory kind of knowledge of how AI works, you got to go through training cycles to train the AI, the machine learning model, so it picks up on the data sets to ensure that there's a high level of accuracy in what you're asking it to do and providing it enough training data, either real, historical, or even simulated within certain upper and lower limits. But basically, it's there to train it to make sure that it's producing something accurately. Okay. So if you have a job right now that's human dependent, one, you have a huge amount of variation because of the amount of humans. There's always variation when there's a human involved because that's the human cognitive function and ability, just how it works. And so what you're saying is, in this moment in time, this snapshot, your business is going to be static because someone's going to come sell you this expensive AI equipment and training module that's based off of an LLM that's trained off of the static properties right now, and your business is never going to change. Well, like, look, if your business is never going to change ever, you're not going to have to change prices or standard operating processes or modules. Your customer base is never going to change. If your company is going to stay static, then yes, I will admit AI could be the solution for you to completely eliminate human dependency at the workforce and just go with an AI solution. However, if there's regulatory changes, if there's any change that's involved, you have to re-ingest all of that data and now apply that new variable and the weighting that variable has to the training algorithm that will go through and retrain and take the amount of time to retrain the AI so that level of accuracy and adherence and regulatory adherence is there. So anybody that's trying to tell you AI can do all of that, no one has done it yet. Show me one case. You guys can put in the comments with an article or whatever that I'll research and go look at. Show me one singular case where that's actually been applicable
Yeah.
or it's been truthful. So getting back, Tim, to your original comment here, how can we use AI to help humans? And not in a way, and this is what I'm really impressed with Alicia's article, is that she talks about Aisha's article, sorry. She talks about what is the burnout factor with using AI because there is a lot of emotional exhaustion relief that comes with using AI, kind of like what Tim was describing. However, there's also another study that shows there's a little bit more pressure that's put on top of the shoulders of people that are using AI that they got to do even more. Those are all workable things, but the thing that really resonated with me in this article is how can you use AI to help and personalize the person based off of any kind of deviation from where they normally were, let's say a month, 2 months, if there's a deviation up or down, upper limit, lower limit breach, how can the AI say, hey, you know what, Tim, it's time to take a break. Hey, Tim,
Right.
check out this funny YouTube video based off of, your prior search history that'll get your mind off of it and have a cognitive reset for you for this amount of time. And I can go find a video that's 5.3 seconds long, so that way it won't take you away from work too much. That's where AI can be
Wow.
augmented to bolster human productivity and human emotion. So, anyways, I'm going to stop now because I'm going to keep going on and nerding out about this, but hopefully all of that made sense. And any comments you want to add on that, Tim?
Well, no, again, I kind of think about companies that are announcing big layoffs. Salesforce just did it again here a few weeks ago in San Francisco. But we also, even our last podcast that we did, talking about a big company, AT&T, and their huge focus on attendance and presence monitoring. And you can just, and I still kind of struggle with that in terms of, but where's the focus on outcomes? And this is where I think AI can help employees, get to outcomes
Agreed.
rather than, how do you, I guess one of the things that I think about, we all in every job, there's a certain amount of administrative overhead that we have, whether it's, oh, I got to fill out a time card, or I got to put together my weekly status report, or whatever it might be. In some cases, it's burdensome. You talk to people like in the healthcare field where they talk about nurses and the amount of time that they're actually spending fingers on a keyboard doing chart updates with vitals, et cetera. Those are things that take the nurse and the human factor away from the bedside, which is where you really have that power.
Right.
Also, teachers. I mean, one of the big things that you read about with teachers at all grades is the amount of administrative burden they bear that it has nothing to do with actually engaging with the student in a classroom to help them learn to learn. This is where I think we should be thinking about AI. It's not like eliminating jobs, but eliminating burdensome work activities. And what that could be, right? You and I were working on a project just a week or so ago where one of the questions was, are there ways that we can do alternate ways to capture data rather than having somebody sit with a keyboard and type in information? In this particular case, it had to do with case managers
Right.
in a situation we can't go into detail around. But again, if a case manager is trying to engage with somebody and they're also trying to type at the same time, and they may not be a sophisticated typist because that's not what they train to be. They train to be
Right.
a social worker. They train to be an engagement
Exactly.
person. And so you sit there and you go, well, geez, well, how come you're not using any number of the hundreds of AI recording tools? And oh, well, it may or may not be, HIPAA compliant or PII compliant, and you go, okay, but that seems like that's the wrong reason not to use it. But there would be,
Well, you even question too. You're like, well, is that a gut feeling you think it may or may not be? Did you actually go research and see if it is or is not? That's another thing that I think is hindering adoption, frankly, is this is the way it's always been done. And to my knowledge, this isn't going to work this way. Whether rather than taking, I don't know, a couple minutes just to go research it or get validation from a source so you can
yeah,
incorporate exactly to the purpose that you're talking about is and like, look, there is a reliance on, especially with larger organizations, not even larger, I would say medium to small businesses as well, on basic data entry, but they don't
um,
want to pay for a separate data entry team because you still have to capture the initial data in the first place. So instead of, in the case you're talking about, it's the caseworker that's having to do that when their time, attention, and focus should be on the person in front of them. That's what their key role is to
yep,
help that individual. Yet now, if you look at it from again just an equation perspective, you look at the amount of weighting, it's divided 50% paying attention and listening, 50% trying to be as accurate as I can in my note taking within a CRM or whatever note taking tool we have. So that way there's good data and aggregate roll ups and everything else that you do with that behind the scenes, which is also important. But it's kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of like, I don't know, not being collaborative or intellectually lazy and saying, "Oh,
well,
well, Tim, I know you're a social worker and you got to do this, but you could do this too." Like, well, you can, but what is the impact of the quality
well,
of what you're trying to do?
and it gets back, and people want to save costs, which I understand, right?
Right, right.
And whether I'm a nonprofit where I'm trying to use every penny to deliver services, a for-profit company where my goal is to earn for the owners, right? There's no question that is a significant goal. But if I can identify, administrative or non-productive time in there, and I can use an AI tool to reduce 30 or 40% time that I'm doing data entry to 10%. I mean, my primary care physician, the last probably 5 or 6 visits that I've gone with her, it's like, here's my phone. Do I have your permission to, use an AI tool to record our session and transcribe it for notes for the charting? Of course, right? And if that allows her then to spend of the 20 or 30 minutes that we spend together, 5 more minutes focused on me rather than hands on a keyboard looking at this, and probably improves the time cycle between the end of my appointment and her prepping for the
And the
next
next,
patient. And
exactly, which means
so,
she can get more done without compromising quality. And guess what comes down? Healthcare costs, right?
well, and
So,
probably a better end of day for her because she
yep,
doesn't have to do all the end of day charting that they all do because they've now forgotten what happened at the 8 o'clock appointment because it's now 6 p.m. Anyway,
exactly.
I think what I liked about this article is one, it's not about, oh, how do I get into
replace.
the vibe coding or context engineering or prompt engineering and yada, yada, yada. But it's like teaching people to use the tool in a way that creates value for the work that person is doing. And I love the idea of like, hey, it can send prompts in there. It can help you manage your day so that at the end of the day, you're not burnt out if you use the tool correctly. And on the flip side, here's the big problem, right? And this we goes back to why we're spending so much time in employee experience. Employees, uh, you know, annual attrition continues to rise, and lack
Right.
engagement continues to fall. And
Yep.
so, on the flip side of all of this, you've got maybe you have fewer people, and they're using these tools, but if they're burnt out and they're disengaged, you are actually burning more money. In other words, you're wasting more money because you're not paying attention to the individual. And the human is still in the equation, and we can't just put the human out there and say, hey, if you don't like it, just leave because there's 50 other people who want your job. That's not a true statement anymore. But
Nope.
maybe it used to be a true statement. And people will say, well, or I can offshore this work to wherever. They're having these same problems in the traditional offshore markets that we're having in the US, because guess
Yep.
what? It's the same generational people. And we got to
Exactly.
get Trent on one of these calls, Trent Savaglio, our good friend, to talk about the whole multi-generational workforce problems that we're having, which are compounded by
Yep.
these things that result in burnout and churn and lack of engagement, and therefore poor outcomes. Come back to what are the outcomes that we're trying to deliver. Anyway, we went on for
100%
this
agree.
one, a good one, but I think we're pretty passionate about it.
Yeah. Well, it's important. It's important. There is an AI adoption gap, and I think it's because they're trying to apply AI incorrectly, frankly. And if we can get folks to, we can have a couple spark sessions like we like to have with our clients, but get the light bulbs to go off with people and say, yeah, let's try to apply AI that way. I
Yeah.
think that's how you're going to get more AI adoption and engagement, and it's going to open up a whole other world of possibilities that you can solution engineer from there. But
I,
big props to Aisha for this article. It's a great like collaborative article to talk with others about, frankly, not just listen to Tim and I, but go talk to others about it. We'll link to it in the comments. Aisha is a social media producer at CNBC, so we'll make sure we link to her great article for reference as well.
I really enjoyed it. And thanks for the conversation today, as always. And, a couple of things just as I finish. I had a session, I had the opportunity to attend the annual gala for a group here in San Francisco called Dev Mission. And if any of the listeners are interested, it's a fascinating nonprofit that's focused on helping close the digital divide. So if you have any interest in understanding that and think about what we were just talking about, is how you bring this workforce in that's going to be able to use these tools to create effective outcomes. This is what that organization does. And so think about it. If you're interested in anything, please comment. We'd love to know more about your feelings on the program. We see the engagement. We see people listening to us, which is pretty crazy, but we love it. And with that, thanks, Andreas. Have a great rest of your week. See you on the next podcast. And thank you, listeners, for taking the time to bear with us.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for the banter, bud.
All
We'll
right.
catch everybody on the next podcast.